Hey, what's up, everybody? Mike Lindsley back with you. 9 minutes with me all over IGTV, Facebook, and YouTube. Make sure to hit me on Twitter at Mike L Sports as well. And of course, all over the major platforms, you can download and subscribe. Leave feedback and a 5-star review for my podcast. It's called the ML Sports Platter. Past guests include ESPN's Adrian Wojnarowski, Linda Cohn, Mark Teixeira, and many others. So make sure you do indeed download, subscribe, and listen. Leave some feedback and a 5-star review. We are brought to you by Empower Federal Credit Union, Barks and Rec Doggy Daycare, Brian Comboy of Mass Mutual New York State, and our awesome friend Ryan Hanlon. He is official realtor of the ML Sports Platter. Make sure you hit him up, RyanWHanlon.com. If you're buying and selling homes in Central New York, it is extremely difficult. It is very stressful. It's nerve-wracking. He can help you out. Head on over to RyanWHanlon.com. He's the official realtor of the ML Sports Platter. So one thing that is absolutely crazy to me is people bringing up past scandals in Major League Baseball and connecting them to the Houston Astros scandal. For example, I go on social media, I try to pick and choose where to argue, where not to argue, because you don't really want to spend a ton of time. But if you want to throw an opinion out there, you want to have a little bit of credibility, and then if people respond to you and they take some time to do so, you want to respond. Well, listen, I am so tired of people using the fact of some New York Yankees using steroids as the Yankees being cheaters and then saying, well, it's worse than what the Houston Astros did. First of all, you can't connect steroids, you can't connect Pete Rose, you can't connect the Black Sox scandal, you can't connect using spitballs, you can't connect a bunch of things to what the Astros did currently. Every scandal is in its own world. That's number one. Every cheating scandal is its own deal, and to connect one to the other and to say one's worse than the other and all that, you can compare that part of it, but you can't bring up something that happened 15 years ago and say, well, that steroid thing happened, and so the Yankees are bigger cheaters than anybody, and that makes a Houston thing not look as bad. Just doesn't make a lot of sense. Number two, anti-Yankee people, they're always going to be anti-Yankee people, and my answer to them is you can't fix stupid. Number three is you really, I think, still have to understand the steroid era. There just was not testing at all in Major League Baseball. Bud Selig and Major League Baseball turned away from it, and they let baseball get back after the 1994 strike. And by the way, Bud Selig being in the Hall of Fame is an absolute crime, in my opinion, because he allowed the 94 streak to happen. He allowed the steroid era to happen under his watch. Those are two black marks. He should not be in the Hall of Fame at all. Another podcast or another video for another day. But steroids were rampant through Major League Baseball. The Mitchell Report was developed. It wasn't all the way, it didn't have enough meat and potatoes, but it did push the sport towards major testing, which we do have today. There are guys in the Hall of Fame who I am sure use steroids. Now, a lot of people assume that Mike Piazza did, assume that Pudge Rodriguez did because of some of the acne and all the rest on their face and the way their body's built up and all the rest. But we don't have concrete proof. We don't have hard copies of failed drug tests. We really only know of a couple of guys who definitely use steroids from hard copies that were found in garbage cans. If you read Game of Shadows by Lance Williams and Mark Fenner-Wada, if you read that book, you'll know that there were blood samples and there were different papers that were chucked in the garbage that basically verified that Barry Bonds had taken steroids. Same thing with Roger Clemens and Brian McNamee stuff. The Hotels up in Toronto, the twilight of his career, still pitching great, and he was on steroids. Okay, I'm not saying that any of it's right. It was an indirect cheating deal, and they didn't have steroid testing. Major League Baseball Players Association got so big to the point where they wouldn't allow blood tests. How was that even possible? The steroid era at the time, if baseball players used steroids, they couldn't get caught. But yet us as American citizens, if you used an illegal steroid, you could literally get arrested for it. How wild is that? The thing is, you can't go back in time now and say, well, all of those New York Yankees used steroids, and so because they did that, the cheating was so rampant, it's way worse than what they did. The Yankees' titles are tainted because they use steroids. That's the most ridiculous thing I have ever heard, that because some New York Yankees use steroids, that people think that the Yankees World Series are tainted when they were all not all, but many players were using steroids around Major League Baseball. When the Yankees were winning World Series titles from 1996 to 2001, do you really think that the Arizona Diamondbacks, the New York Mets, the Atlanta Braves, the Texas Rangers, the Baltimore Orioles, the Boston Red Sox, do you really think that from A to Z that all of those rosters were clean from steroid users? You've got to be kidding me. Steroids were rampant throughout the game, and there was no hardcore proof of steroid use in the game, and there was no testing. The Mitchell report ended up getting developed. There were some guys on it. A lot of those guys were New York Yankees. I'm not going to poo-poo that. Obviously, a lot of Yankees have been in the steroid world. Jason Giambi, A-Rod got caught. Roger Clemens, Andy Pettitte admitted to using human growth hormone because of his elbow injury, and who knows if that was the end of it for Andy Pettitte, because he went and played with Roger Clemens in Houston. He was teammates with Roger Clemens through the years. They were buddies, going to Texas in the offseason. Who knows if they used even more steroids, and Andy Pettitte did as well. I don't know, because I don't have factual proof. The difference with the steroid era, which eventually got to the testing we have now, and I still think they're cutting corners with it, and I still think there are ways to get around it with using certain things and all that. But again, if you drug test somebody and you go into a clubhouse and you make them piss, and it comes back with breaking the PED rules and all the rest, they get fined. They get the hammer brought down on them from what the suspensions are. That's where we are. We have testing now. The difference with that being the steroid era and the steroid testing now and the Astros scandal, is that the Astros were warned. Major League Baseball was warned after Rob Manfred came across the Apple Watch, possible stealing of signs using major electronic equipment, not just the Apple Watch, but also video cameras and all the rest. The analytic nerds in today's society, they love two things. They love the numbers and they love technology. There's no more analytical team in Major League Baseball than the Houston Astros. They put a camera in center field, they zoomed in with those signs, and then they took the signs and transferred them to another camera in a tunnel outside the dugout, and then they had whistleblowers, trash can hitters, whatever the hell you want to call it, Alex Cora players, etc. All of them were involved, and who knows what the devices used on the uniform, the pants, the jersey, etc. My point is, this is factual proof. There's factual technology. There was a major investigation where technology is supposed to not be used to steal signs, and Major League Baseball caught them. If you want to bring up the steroid era of years ago, we're talking 15, 20, 25, 30 years, you want to go all the way back to the 70s, I'm guaranteeing you right now that steroids were rampant through baseball in the mid to late 70s, all the way through the 80s, all the way through the 90s, and the early 2000s, until we actually got real testing. But if you want to make the analogy, let's do this. If there was steroid testing from, let's say, I don't know, let's say the early 90s until now, if there was steroid testing and guys had to piss in a cup randomly, okay, let's say they walked in and tested Darryl Strawberry, they went in and tested Derek Jeter, they went in and tested Alex Rodriguez, Ken Griffey Jr., Mike Piazza, Ken Caminiti, Larry Walker, all of them, name the players. If the testing was in place and they failed a test and they got suspended for it, and then they did it again and they were suspended, even more. And then, of course, the ban for life thing, which is the third time, right? Okay, use that analogy. If that steroid testing was in place then, it's the same exact thing as what just happened to the Astros from a technological standpoint. There is foolproof evidence out there of what the Astros did. It is a major cheating situation, a major cheating scandal, and it affects the outcomes of games. If you don't think it does, go look at the 2017 stat line of the Astros home and away. Go look at Jose Altuve's stats. Go look at the way they won 4 games in the ALCS against the Yankees all at home, and they lost all the away games at Yankee Stadium. There is full concrete proof of this. There is evidence. There was an investigation. While if you go back to the steroid era, there was nothing. There was no steroid testing. Major League Baseball Players Association was way too strong. They didn't allow blood tests. They didn't allow anything. And so we had home run records getting blown out of proportion. Barry Bonds turns into a mutant. He ends up crawling up to the all-time home run list. Roger Clemens does his thing. Twilight of his career. He's dominant. We had all sorts of things going on. We had Ken Caminiti dying from a mix of blood alcohol and alcohol, drug use, and of course PEDs. So you can't compare one scandal to the next. We have full concrete proof of the Astros with their technology right now, which if you want to liken it to something, and the steroid era which you bring up, you would have to go back in time and say, well, that would be like the steroid era having actual testing. That analogy would be fine. This one is not.